The night air hung heavy with an unnatural stillness as Elias made his way through the winding streets of Liloan. The absence of familiar sounds, barking dogs, chirping crickets, even the rustle of leaves sent a chill down his spine. His skepticism had finally crumbled under the weight of recent events. And now he found himself seeking answers from the one person he'd always dismissed as a superstitious old fool. Old man Pedro's ramshackle house loomed before him, a weathered sentinel at the edge of town. Elias hesitated at the door, his hand trembling slightly as he raised it to knock. Before his knuckles could make contact, the door creaked open, revealing Pedro's wizened face in the flickering light of a gas lamp. "I've been expecting you, Elias," the old man rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "Come in, quickly. It's not safe to linger in the open, not when night has fallen." Elias stepped inside, the floorboards groaning beneath his feet. The interior was cluttered with strange objects, dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, jars filled with unidentifiable substances, and weathered books stacked haphazardly on every surface. Pedro gestured for Elias to sit in a worn armchair, then settled himself on a rickety stool across from him. "You've come about the disappearances, haven't you?" Pedro asked, his rheumy eyes fixed on Elias's face. "About poor Bulldog and the others." Elias nodded, swallowing hard. I need to understand what's happening, Pedro. I've always thought your stories were just that, stories. But now," Pedro leaned forward, his face cast in deep shadows by the flickering lamp. "It is the Aswang, Elias," he said, his voice dropping even lower. "A creature of our old stories, but a real one. As real as you and me, and far more dangerous than either of us could ever be." Elias felt a cold dread settle in the pit of his stomach. He'd heard whispers of the Aswang before, but had always dismissed them as folklore meant to frighten children into behaving. Now, faced with the grim reality of Bulldog's disappearance and the growing fear that gripped the town, he found himself hanging on Pedro's every word. "Tell me everything," Elias urged, leaning forward in his seat. Pedro's eyes seemed to cloud over as if he were peering into some distant, terrible memory. "The Aswang is a shapeshifter, Elias. It can take many forms: a dog, a pig, a bird, even a beautiful woman. But its true form that is a horror beyond imagining." The old man's gnarled hands trembled as he continued. "It hunts at night, especially seeking out pregnant women and the sick. The Aswang craves the unborn, the weak. It uses its long, hollow tongue to suck the life from its victims, leaving them dry like husks." Elias felt his gorge rise at the description, but he forced himself to listen. Pedro went on, describing the telltale signs of the Aswang's presence, the unnatural silence that fell over an area, as if all other creatures cowered in fear, the faint metallic scent that lingered in the air, and most horrifying of all, the shriveled bodies of its victims drained of blood and life. "But how can such a creature exist among us without being noticed?" Elias asked, his voice hoarse with fear and disbelief. Pedro's eyes narrowed. "That is the true terror of the Aswang, my boy. It lives among us, hiding in plain sight by day, transforming under the cover of darkness. Your neighbor, your friend, even a family member, any of them could be the monster in disguise." The implications of Pedro's words sent Elias's mind reeling. He thought of the faces he passed every day in the market, the people he'd known all his life, Could one of them truly be this abomination? Is there no way to identify them? Elias pressed, desperate for some means of protection. Pedro shook his head slowly. There are ways, but they are not foolproof. Some say an Aswang's eyes will reflect upside down in a mirror. Others claim that dropping ash on the roof of a suspected Aswang's home will reveal their true nature. If the ash falls through, it means the monster is out hunting in another form. Elias absorbed this information, his mind racing with the implications. And how do we protect ourselves? How do we fight back? The old man's face grew even more grave. Salt and garlic can repel them, and they fear the light of day. But to truly defeat an Aswang, that requires courage, faith, and often a terrible sacrifice. Pedro reached beneath his chair and pulled out a small, cloth-wrapped bundle. With trembling hands, he unwrapped it, revealing a wickedly sharp knife with strange symbols etched into its blade. This has been passed down through generations in my family, Pedro explained. It's said to be one of the few weapons that can truly harm an Aswang, but using it, that comes at a great cost. Elias, are you prepared to pay it? Elias stared at the blade, its edge gleaming in the lamplight. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders like a physical burden. He thought of Bulldog, of the terror that now gripped Liloan. Slowly, he reached out and took the knife, feeling its weight in his hand. I'll do whatever it takes to protect our town, Elias said, his voice steady, despite the fear that churned in his gut. Pedro nodded solemnly. Then listen carefully, for what I am about to tell you may be the only thing that stands between Liloan and utter destruction. As the night deepened outside, Pedro began to share ancient secrets and forgotten lore, arming Elias with the knowledge he would need to face the horror that stalked their streets. With each passing moment, the reality of the situation settled more firmly upon Elias's shoulders. He had entered Pedro's home a skeptic, seeking answers to quiet his fears. He would leave it a hunter, tasked with confronting a nightmare made flesh. The gas lamp flickered, casting long shadows across the room as Pedro's words painted a picture of the battle to come. Elias listened intently, knowing that the fate of Liloan, and perhaps his own soul, hung in the balance. The night stretched on, filled with whispered warnings and terrible truths, as the Aswang continued its silent reign of terror beyond the walls.